Welcome to Hollywood Graveyard. Today I turn the camera back over to you, the Hollywood Graveyard community, as we explore the world to visit famous and historical graves in your neck of the woods. On today's tour, we'll find legends like Dolores del Rio, Suzanne Somers, Yves Saint Laurent, Cliff Robertson, and many more. My friends, the time is yours. Earlier this year, we concluded our third viewer special series. We had a few late arrivals, and have also had, over the past year or so, friends around the world send us various videos. The original plan was to wait and include these in round 4 of the viewer special, but it might be a little while before we get there. So instead of making these folks wait to see their videos, I thought it would be fun this month to do a quick standalone viewer video. It's not the beginning of round 4 of the viewer special. Let's instead think of it as an encore performance of round 3. Today's video will take us all over the world, so let's get rolling. We begin today making our first ever trip to Marrakesh, Morocco. Here in the grounds of Majorelle Gardens we find the Yves Saint Laurent Memorial. His is a name that has become synonymous with fashion, rising to become one of the biggest names in the industry in the 20th century. The Algerian-born French fashion designer started his eponymous fashion label in 1961 and in early 1962 released his first collection. In the years leading up to that, he had been working as the lead designer at the House of Dior, but after a falling out with the company, set out on his own with his partner Pierre Berger. He's famous for introducing the Le Smoking evening tuxedo for women, and soon began releasing a popular line of men's fragrances as well. By the 70s, he was considered the prominent designer in the world, and by the late 70s, he'd introduced the big shoulder pad looks that would dominate the 80s. The film world would call on his talents as well, helping design wardrobe for the likes of Catherine Deneuve in several of her films, like Belle de Jour and The Hunger. Yves Saint Laurent died from brain cancer in Paris at age 71. He was cremated, his ashes buried here on the grounds of his villa in Morocco. Here too is his partner, both romantic and business, Pierre Berger. He was co-founder of the Yves Saint Laurent label, whose financial backing made the venture possible. Let's hop back over to Europe and spend a little more time in Paris and Père Lachaise Cemetery. Here lies Yvette Chauvire. As noted here on her stone, Yvette was a prima ballerina at the Paris Opera, considered among her generation's greatest dancers. Certainly described as France's greatest ballerina, prominent in the 1940s and 50s. She's remembered for dancing with Rudolf Nureyev and performing in ballets like The Nutcracker, Sleeping Beauty, and Giselle, considered her signature piece. Later, she'd be a co-director of the Paris Opera Ballet School. Yvette also appeared in a few films, including 1937's The Death of the Swan. She would be awarded the Legion of Honor amid many other accolades. Yvette lived just shy of a century. You fans of ballet might also know the name Serge Peretti, who mentored Yvette Chauvire for a time. He was an Italian dancer who made his debut with the Paris Opera Ballet in 1923. He became premier dancer at the age of 20, and in 1931 was the first dancer to be granted the title of étoile, star. Serge would also go on to become ballet master, choreographer, and instructor. He lived to be 92. Here too we find a talented musician named Ginette Neveu, a virtuoso violin player, considered one of the finest violinists of her generation. She rose to worldwide celebrity in 1935 when, at just 15, she won an international violin competition. She was immediately signed to an extensive touring contract. But this rising talent was cut down far too soon in what is considered one of the greatest tragedies in violin history. She was aboard an Air France flight in 1949 when the plane crashed in the Azores. She died at just 30. Her 1730 Stradivarius violin was also lost. Victor Schoelcher's monument here at Père Lachaise is quite an eye-catcher, featuring a skull, dragon wings, and an effigy of himself. Victor was an author and abolitionist in the 19th century who rose to prominence for his leading role in the abolition of slavery in France in 1848. As a young man, Victor took trips to the American South and the West Indies where he learned about slavery. Upon his return to France, he began writing articles and books proposing the gradual abolition of slavery. In time, as his studies of the horrific effects of slavery grew more profound, he shifted his efforts from a gradual abolition to an immediate emancipation of slaves globally. Finally, on April 27, 1848, Victor Schoelcher prepared and wrote the decree through which the French government abolished slavery in all its colonies and granted citizenship to the emancipated slaves. He was originally laid to rest here after his death in 1893, but to honor him, the French government had his remains transferred to the Pantheon in 1949, so this site at Père Lachaise is now a cenotaph. Let's hop over the border to Switzerland and Cimetière de Plainpalais in Geneva. Here lies Jorge Luis Borges. He was an Argentine short story writer, essayist, and poet who gained worldwide acclaim in the mid-20th century, having a major influence on the magical realist movement of the era, which depicts the fantastical in the everyday in a philosophical manner. His notable works include Ficciones and The Aleph, and his accolades include the first International Formentor Prize and the Jerusalem Prize. Jorge died from cancer in 1986 at age 86. We're back in Italy again, this time in Fagagna at Cimitero di Santa Maria Assunta. This is the grave of Robert Miles, real name Roberto Concina. He was an Italian composer and music producer. In 1994, he wrote his most famous dance track, Children, a song which became #1 in several European countries and has since sold more than 5 million copies. He'd become the only Italian artist to win a Brit Award. Robert released 5 albums between 1996 and 2011, but his life was cut short when he died from cancer in 2017 at just 47. Our globe-trotting friends take us to another exotic locale we've never been to before, Turkey. We're in Konya and the tomb shrine of Rumi. Born Jalal al-Din Muhammad Rumi, also known by his sobriquet Mevlana, he was a 13th century poet and Sufi mystic. His mystic writings in poetry are generally considered to be the supreme expression of Sufism, the mystical trend in Islamic thought and culture. Among his most influential works is the Masnavi, a long poem in rhymed couplets written in 6 books. It is considered among the greatest works of mystical poetry. His work often explored relationships between the seeing eye, the understanding mind, and the feeling heart. Rumi died in 1273 and was laid to rest here in what has come to be known as the Green Tomb. His epitaph reads, "When we are dead, seek not our tomb in the earth, but find it in the hearts of men." We're in Prague now, and this sign points us in the direction we want to go, here in the Jewish cemetery. Our destination is the grave of Franz Kafka. He was a writer and novelist, widely regarded as a major literary figure of the 20th century, though he gained little notoriety during his lifetime. He is famous for novels and short stories that fuse elements of realism with the fantastic, often featuring isolated protagonists facing bizarre predicaments. The term Kafkaesque has come to describe situations like those in his writing, which are nightmarish scenarios marked by surreal disorientation, unseen oppressive forces, and a sense of impending doom. His best-known works include the novella The Metamorphosis, published in 1915, and the novels The Trial and The Castle. His work would inspire film adaptations, including Metamorphosis and The Trial. Kafka died from complications of laryngeal tuberculosis at just 40. Let's spend a little time now in Poland, in the Warsaw area. We'll visit 2 cemeteries while here, finding a number of notables from Polish history and culture. Let me apologize in advance if I mispronounce any of these names. First up is Old Pawłowski Cemetery. You fans of romantic piano music might recognize the silhouette on this piano-shaped grave as that of Frédéric Chopin. He's not buried here, he's back at Père Lachaise, but here lie Chopin's proud parents, Nicholas and Tekla. Next to the Chopins rests another famous composer, Stanislaw Moniuszko, known for his work in opera. His work is filled with patriotic folk themes in popular works like The Haunted Manor and Halka. He is generally considered the father of the Polish national opera. If you're a student of math and enjoy the odd fractal, you're probably familiar with the Sierpinski triangle. Here lies its namesake, Wacław Sierpinski. The mathematician is remembered for his contributions to set theory, number theory, and topology, publishing over 700 papers and 50 books throughout his career. In 1915, he described the fractal known as the Sierpinski triangle. He's also the namesake of the Sierpinski carpet, the Sierpinski curve, and other fractals. He died in 1969 at age 87. The symbol here on his tomb is omega, meaning the end. Here too we find an author named Wladyslaw Reymont. He was a recipient of the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1924. His best-known work is the award-winning 4-volume novel The Peasants. His work, including The Peasants, would be adapted on film and television numerous times. He lived to be 58. Rosemary's Baby is one of the great cult classics in the horror genre. It was directed by Polish director Roman Polanski, and the music for Rosemary's Baby was composed by Krzysztof Komeda, resting here. His haunting music for Rosemary's Baby set a wonderful tone, including the lullaby song Sleep Safe and Warm, sung by Mia Farrow. La, 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 la. Other films include The Fearless Vampire Killers and Knife in the Water. Krzysztof was just 37 when he died after a series of unusual circumstances. After a late night of drinking in the Hollywood Hills, he fell and hit his head. A friend picked him up but dropped him, causing him to hit his head again. He insisted he was all right, but later developed flu-like symptoms and difficulty breathing. He was hospitalized with a blood clot in the brain and at one point was clinically dead. After emergency surgery, he was resuscitated, and after a few months' stay in the hospital, he flew home to Warsaw. But there he died just a few months later. Next up is an acclaimed Polish director named Krzysztof Kieslowski. He gained international recognition for his films Decalogue, The Double Life of Veronique, and the Three Colors trilogy. Kieslowski was nominated for 2 Oscars in his career, both for the film Three Colors, Red, for Best Director and Best Writer. Other accolades include the Cannes Film Festival Jury Prize. Total Film once ranked him among the top 100 film directors of modern times. He died during open-heart surgery at the age of 54. If you've seen behind the scenes of filmmaking, you might have seen the director making this gesture with his hands. It's a quick cheat for directors to frame and preview a shot without a viewfinder. Next door is Violetta Villas. She was a Polish cabaret star, singer, and actress, sometimes dubbed the Polish Ima Sumac. She toured the cabaret circuit internationally for 50 years, becoming a global star. In the 60s, she landed in Vegas, where she would be headlining star of the Casino de Paris at the Dunes Hotel. During her residency, she'd perform alongside the likes of Dean Martin, Sammy Davis Jr., Frank Sinatra, and Barbra Streisand. Hollywood came calling, but she turned it down to return to Poland. But she would continue to tour and sing on stage, including sold-out shows at Carnegie Hall. Violetta died at the age of 73. This is the grave of Irena Sendler. She was a social worker and nurse who served in the Polish Underground Railroad resistance during World War II in German-occupied Warsaw. She worked to provide services for orphans and the poor. Under Nazi occupation, Irena helped shelter Jewish children, often having to register them under fictitious Christian names. Issuing forged documents, Irena helped smuggle some 2,500 Jewish children out of the ghetto and shelter them with Polish families or in orphanages or convents, saving them from the Holocaust. She kept careful records of the children's real names, hiding the list and burying it under an apple tree. She was arrested by the Nazis in 1943, tortured and sentenced to death, but she refused to give up the names of the children. She was saved from execution when a fellow member of the underground managed to bribe a member of the Gestapo and escaped from prison. A movie was made about her story titled The Courageous Heart of Irena Sendler, in which she was portrayed by Anna Paquin. One more stop here at Old Powązki. Let's take a moment to remember victims of the concentration camps here in Poland, some of whose ashes rest here. Let's move on to our second Poland cemetery, the Military Powązki Cemetery. The story of Władysław Szpilman came to global attention through the release of the 2002 film The Pianist. Szpilman was a Polish-Jewish pianist and composer and a Holocaust survivor. He became well known as a performer, playing for Polish radio in the 30s. Upon the Nazi invasion of Poland, he, along with all Jews in Warsaw, were forced to relocate into a ghetto where they were confined. He worked as a pianist to support his family. In 1942, his family was deported to an extermination camp, but he evaded deportation, being pulled from the line last minute by a Jewish officer who recognized him. In the years that followed, he hid out in various locations around Warsaw, avoiding capture. But in November 1944, he was discovered by a German officer. Upon learning he was a pianist, the officer instructed Szpilman to play the piano. Perhaps the universal language and power of music moved the German officer, who, instead of arresting him, decided to help him, bringing him food and supplies, helping him to stay alive. After the war, Szpilman resumed his career composing and performing on the radio. He lived to be 88. Szpilman was portrayed by Adrian Brody in the 2002 film The Pianist, which won 3 Oscars. It was based on his memoir. This distinctive grave marker is a reflection of the artistic style of the man resting thereunder, Wojciech Fangor. He was an important figure in the Polish post-war abstract movement, associated with op art and color field. Circles were among his favorite motifs. He has had exhibits in such illustrious institutions as the Guggenheim, the Museum of Modern Art in New York, the Israel Museum, and the National Museum in Warsaw. Recently, a work of Fangor sold for $1.9 million. He lived to be 92. A film strip adorns the tomb of actress Elżbieta Czyżewska. She rose to prominence as an actress in the 60s, garnering acclaim in breakthrough performances in films like The Saragossa Manuscript and Marriage of Convenience. Having risen to become one of Poland's top young actors, she soon took her talents to the United States, partially motivated by her husband's exile from Poland for his criticism of the then communist regime. She did theater work in New York, including winning an Obie Award in 1990 for her role in Crowbar. And her American films include Running on Empty, as well as appearances on TV shows like Damages and Sex and the City. She died in 2010 at age 72 from cancer and was laid to rest here in her native Poland. The 1987 film Anna is loosely based on her life. Across the way is Magdalena Abakanowicz, another noted Polish artist of the post-war era resting in these grounds. She was a sculptor, remembered particularly for her use of textiles as a medium. Her most celebrated works emerged in the 60s with the creation of three-dimensional fiber works called abakans, and later transitioned to humanoid sculptures. Among her prominent public works that made their way over to the States are Agora in Chicago and Birds of Knowledge of Good and Evil in Milwaukee. And in 2023, she was the subject of the Google Doodle. Magdalena lived to be 86. We're chasing the last of the daylight, supplanted with candlelight, as we visit a monument to Kazimierz Dana. He was a professional footballer, soccer player to us Americans, who ranked among the most highly regarded players of his generation. Throughout his career, he would play for such clubs as Legia Warsaw, Manchester City, and the San Diego Sockers. At the 1972 Olympics, he won gold with Poland and was top goal scorer. And he was named the greatest Polish footballer of the 20th century. Dana was just 41 when he died from injuries sustained in a car accident in San Diego. Cryptology played an important role in the victories of World War II, and Marian Rejewski here was a key early figure in those endeavors. He was a mathematician and cryptologist who, in 1932, reconstructed sight unseen the German Enigma cipher machine, aided by documents from French military intelligence. The Enigma machine was used by the Germans to encrypt their messages. Marian became the first person to crack the Enigma code. His efforts allowed for the decryption of Enigma ciphers and German secret messages. The Poles shared their achievements with their French and British counterparts. The code-breaking efforts of the brilliant scientists and mathematicians from all these nations, and later America, helped lead to the defeat of Nazi Germany. After the outbreak of the war, Marian and other Polish cryptologists were evacuated to France and Britain, where they continued cracking Enigma ciphers. He died from a heart attack at age 74. For our last Poland stop, let's visit this monument to Polish Airlines Flight 007, which crashed near the Warsaw Airport on March 14, 1980. It originated from JFK in New York. All 77 passengers and 10 crew were killed. Aboard was pop singer Anna Jantar. Additionally, a contingent of the U.S. boxing team was aboard, which included 14 boxers and 8 staff. This monument marks the graves of the crew of the flight. Next up, we land back in England at Beacon Park in Lichfield. You aficionados of Titanic lore know that many of the victims of the Titanic disaster were lost at sea, and some of those whose bodies were never recovered have memorial monuments placed to them. Notable among them, the captain of the ship, Captain Edward John Smith. The British sea captain and naval officer joined the White Star Line as an officer in 1880. He would captain numerous ships, including the Republic, the Majestic, Adriatic, and Olympic, Titanic's sister ship. Smith was transferred to the Titanic while Olympic underwent repairs after colliding with a British cruiser. This fateful transfer would put Captain Smith in charge of the Titanic on its doomed maiden voyage. Late on April 14, 1912, the ship hit an iceberg and sank. As the ship foundered, Captain Smith took control of the efforts to radio for help and get passengers into lifeboats. Smith was reportedly last seen on the bridge and went down with the ship, but there are many conflicting accounts as to his final fate. His body was never recovered, so this is a memorial monument, unveiled by his daughter in 1914. Ironically, it was to have been Captain Smith's last voyage before retirement. He has been portrayed on screen numerous times, including by Bernard Hill in the 1997 film Titanic. Let's take a long trip now to the Southern Hemisphere to visit Southland, New Zealand, and Eastern Cemetery. In these grounds rests a man who rode the world's fastest Indian, Burt Munro. He was a noted motorcycle racer. His claim to fame is having set an under 1,000cc world speed record at the Bonneville Salt Flats in Utah on August 26, 1967, with a two-way average speed of 184 miles per hour, a record which still stands. This record was made on his modified 1920 Indian Scout motorcycle, a 47-year-old machine, and he was 68 at the time. In the 9 times he raced at Bonneville, Munro would set 3 world records in 1962, 66, and 67. His life was the basis of the 2005 film, The World's Fastest Indian, in which he was portrayed by Anthony Hopkins. Burt Munro died from natural causes at age 78. Continuing our global journey, let's visit our neighbors to the south in Mexico. This is Panteón Civil de Dolores in Mexico City. In the Rotunda de las Personas Ilustres, the Rotunda of Illustrious Persons, rest, as you may have surmised, a number of illustrious persons in Mexican culture. Among them is legendary actress Dolores del Rio. She was one of the biggest movie stars to come out of Mexico during Hollywood's golden age, regarded as the first female Latin American crossover star. Her career spanned some 5 decades, beginning in the silent era. Early films include Resurrection, What Price Glory, and Ramona, during which time she was thought of as the feminine version of Rudolph Valentino, cinema's female Latin lover. Come the talkies, she'd star in films like Madame du Barry, Bird of Paradise, and Flying Down to Rio.
Of course he's deliberately trying to keep you here. That's why he picked a deserted island. Isn't that what you want? I can't let him know that. After all, I must maintain my reserve.
In the 40s, she returned to Mexico and became an important figure in the golden age of Mexican cinema, including starring in the critically acclaimed Maria Candelaria. In the decades that followed, she'd appear in both American and Mexican film and television as well. Dolores died from liver failure at age 78. In commemoration of her pioneering work in film, Dolores is one of 4 actresses honored with statues in the Gateway Rotunda at the Walk of Fame, alongside Mae West, Dorothy Dandridge, and Anna May Wong. The monument honors the multi-ethnic leading ladies of cinema. Nearby is the uniquely ornate tomb of a famed artist named Diego Rivera. He was one of the most prominent Latin American painters of the 20th century. He's particularly remembered for his large fresco murals, which helped establish the mural movement in Mexican and international art. Between 1922 and 1953, he painted murals all over the world, including Mexico City, San Francisco, Detroit, New York City, and more. He holds the record for the highest price at an auction for a work by a Latin American artist, $9.67 million for his 1931 painting, The Rivals. Rivera was married to another legendary artist, Frida Kahlo. He died at age 70 in 1957. His wish was to be cremated and for his ashes to be mixed with those of Frida Kahlo. Instead, his family opted to have him buried here. His tomb features traditional Mayan and Aztec imagery, a mosaic, as well as marble replicas of his death mask and hand molds. Back in the US, we'll traverse a few states, beginning in New York. Specifically, we're at Cedar Lawn Cemetery in East Hampton. Here lies Cliff Robertson. He was a noted actor whose career spanned some 6 decades. Perhaps his biggest claim to fame is noted right here on his stone, having won the Academy Award for Best Actor for his role in the 1968 film Charlie. Other films include Gidget and Escape from LA. Younger audiences perhaps remember him best for his role as Uncle Ben in the Sam Raimi Spider-Man films. Spider-Man 3 would be his final role.
Remember, with great power comes great responsibility.
On television, Cliff played Dr. Ranson on Falcon Crest and made appearances on shows like Batman. And what's this cute little figure here? Well, if you're a fan of The Twilight Zone, as you know I am, you'll remember Cliff in 2 episodes, including this one alongside a creepy talking dummy named Willie. Cliff died from natural causes at age 88. Green River Cemetery in East Hampton has become something of an artist's cemetery over the years. Perhaps the biggest name in modern art here rests under this boulder, Jackson Pollock. He was a key figure in the abstract expressionist movement of the 20th century. Pollock is particularly known for his drip technique of painting, splattering paint and color across a large canvas, often in a frenetic dancing style. His most productive period came in the late 40s, early 50s, culminating with a 4-page spread in Life magazine, which posed the question, is he the greatest living painter in the United States? His unconventional style drew both praise and criticism, with detractors deriding the randomness of his painting. Pollock's paintings have sold for millions, with his work Number 5, 1948 becoming the world's most expensive painting in 2006 when it sold for $140 million. This record was later broken by another of his own work, Number 117A, which sold for $200 million. Jackson Pollock struggled with alcoholism much of his life. In 1956, he was involved in an alcohol-related single-car crash. He died from his injuries at age 44. A movie would be made about his life, starring Ed Harris as Pollock. His wife rests nearby. Lee Krasner was also an artist, and like her husband, she too was associated with the abstract expressionist movement. Her work has been exhibited in institutions like the Metropolitan Museum of Art and the Museum of Modern Art in New York City. And several of her paintings have sold for over $1 million. She lived to be 75. Lee was portrayed by Marcia Gay Harden in the film Pollock, a role which won her the Oscar. Alan Manson was an actor, perhaps best remembered today for his role as Sam in the 1971 cult classic Let's Scare Jessica to Death. Other films include The Devil's Advocate, The Cemetery Club, and The Doors. Alan thrived on television as well, appearing on Kojak, Maude, Columbo, Charlie's Angels, The Edge of Night, Three's Company, and more. He lived to be 83. In our last video at San Fernando Mission, we visited funny lady Terry Garr. Here in New York, we find her co-star from Young Frankenstein, Peter Boyle. He played Frankenstein's monster in the classic 1974 horror comedy.
I live because this poor, half-crazed genius has given me life. He alone held an image of me as something beautiful.
And television audiences know Peter for his role as Frank, Ray's father, on Everybody Loves Raymond in some 210 episodes. The role would earn him 7 Emmy nominations. He would win an Emmy for a guest role on The X-Files. Other films include Taxi Driver, Red Heat, and The Shadow. Peter Boyle died at age 71 from multiple myeloma and heart disease. Here too we find a filmmaker named Alan Pakula. He was a producer and director prominent in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. Early in his career he helped produce To Kill a Mockingbird. Alan then became a noted director, whose films include All the President's Men, Sophie's Choice, and The Pelican Brief. He would be thrice nominated for an Academy Award for producing To Kill a Mockingbird, directing All the President's Men, and writing Sophie's Choice. He died in a freak accident when driving along the expressway. A driver in front of him hit a metal pipe, causing that pipe to fly through his windshield and strike him on the head. Alan was 70. You can probably guess what Stan Vanderbeek was known for, given the film reels on his grave. His independent films were works of abstract art, often consisting of animated paintings, cutouts, collages, etc. This style would be heavily influential on filmmaker Terry Gilliam. He was also an early adopter of the digital computer as a creative medium. Stan died from cancer at age 57. This abstract piece marks the grave of Elaine de Kooning. She was another of the abstract artists resting in these grounds. She was an accomplished landscape and portrait artist. Her work has been exhibited in top galleries and features portraits of the likes of Allen Ginsberg, Pele, self-portraits, and even John F. Kennedy, perhaps the most important commission of her career. Elaine was married to another pioneer of abstract expressionism, Willem de Kooning. She lived to be 70. We find writers here too, like Frank O'Hara. He was a leading figure in the New York School, an informal group of artists active in New York City in the 50s and 60s. His poetry has a personal tone, described as sounding like entries in a diary. His posthumous collection, The Collected Poems of Frank O'Hara, shared the 1972 National Book Award for Poetry. Frank was also a curator at the Museum of Modern Art. He was just 40 when he died after being struck by a car. His epitaph, "Grace to be born and live as variously as possible," is a quote from his poem In Memory of My Feelings. Fred Coe was a creative force from the early days of television. With his experience in theater production, he made his mark on the brand new medium of television. The earliest television shows were often televised plays, teleplays, anthologies with different stories and casts every week. Fred would produce and direct for shows including the Goodyear Television Playhouse, the Philco Television Playhouse, and Playhouse 90. In the world of film, Fred would be nominated for an Oscar as a producer of the 1965 film 1,000 Clowns, which he also directed. Fred died from a heart attack at age 64. South now to Virginia and Arlington National Cemetery. In the columbarium we find the niche of Phyllis Kirk. You fans of classic horror might remember Phyllis best as the woman stalked by the maniacal sculptor played by Vincent Price in the 1953 film House of Wax.
You shouldn't have done that, my dear. It is Kathy. It's Kathy's body under the wax. I knew it. I knew it all the time.
Other films include 2 Weeks with Love and Johnny Concho. And on television, she's best remembered for playing Nora Charles in the Thin Man television series of the 50s. The role would earn her a Primetime Emmy nomination. She also made guest appearances on shows like Zane Grey Theater, The Twilight Zone, and The FBI. Phyllis retired from acting in the 70s and lived to be 79. This is Evergreen Cemetery in Pennsylvania. Here lies Oscar Shaw. The actor and singer is mainly known for his work on radio and the Broadway stage, principally musicals. These included Leave It to Jane, The Rose of China, The Music Box Revue, Flying High, and many more. On film, he performed alongside the Marx Brothers and Mary Eaton in The Coconuts, and alongside Bing Crosby in Rhythm on the River, his final film role. Oscar lived to be 79. Lakewood Park Cemetery is in Rocky River, Ohio. Here we find a baseball player named Herb Score. He played in the major leagues in the 50s and 60s for the Cleveland Indians and Chicago White Sox. He was a pitcher. Over his career, he'd be a 2-time All-Star, American League Rookie of the Year, and 2-time American League strikeout leader. After retiring from play, he went on to be a play-by-play announcer for the Cleveland Indians for the next 34 years. He died at age 75 after a lengthy illness. You've probably seen the ads for the St. Jude Children's Hospital here in Memphis, Tennessee. But did you know that the hospital's founder is buried here on the grounds? This is the Danny and Rosemarie Thomas Memorial Garden, where rests Danny Thomas. The actor and funny man began making his mark as a nightclub comedian and on the radio, including his own radio show, The Danny Thomas Show, in the 40s. Film roles followed, including starring roles in the 1952 remake of The Jazz Singer alongside Peggy Lee, and I'll See You in My Dreams alongside Doris Day. He then went on to have his own wildly successful television show, The Danny Thomas Show, which ran for an astounding 343 episodes in the 50s and 60s. He also made guest appearances on shows like Empty Nest, Here's Lucy, Mod Squad, and That Girl, alongside his daughter, Marlo Thomas. Thomas also produced shows, including The Dick Van Dyke Show, Mod Squad, and The Joey Bishop Show. Early in his life as a starving artist, he vowed that if he ever found financial success, he would open a shrine dedicated to St. Jude, the patron saint of hopeless causes. He was true to his vow, and used his wealth and fame to build St. Jude's Children's Research Hospital, whose motto is that no child should die in the dawn of life. St. Jude has treated countless children from around the world at no cost to them or their families, with their continuing mission of finding cures and saving children. Danny Thomas died from a heart attack at age 79 and is buried here alongside his wife in this mausoleum on the grounds of the children's hospital he founded. Turning south, we arrive back in Louisiana. This is Pearson Cemetery in Union Parish. Jesse Pearson, real name Bobby Wayne, was an actor and singer. In the 60s, he was cast for the National Stage Company of the hit musical Bye Bye Birdie in the title character role of Conrad Birdie. When the musical was made into a film of the same name in 1963, Jesse reprised his role as Conrad Birdie, performing alongside Anne Margaret. Other films include Advance to the Rear, and television appearances include On the Beverly Hillbillies, The Andy Griffith Show, Death Valley Days, and Bonanza. He also released a number of popular spoken word albums. Jesse was just 49 when he died from cancer. Continuing west, we arrive once again in Texas and B'nai Israel Cemetery in Victoria. This is the final resting place of Polly Lou Livingston. She was a socialite, fashion enthusiast, and voice actress. She was famous in her native Texas for her art tea parties, Polly Lou parties they were called. Television audiences will know her best for voicing the lovable yellow-green elephant Tree Trunks on the animated series Adventure Time.
Oh, man, and their swords. You boys, stop horsing around with my apples.
Aw, Tree Trunks.
Now come on over. I baked y'all an apple pie.
She also voiced Slippy Napkins on Bravest Warriors. Polly Lou lived to be 91 and was reportedly laid to rest here with her family, though there is no marker for her. It's thought that this single brick may mark the spot where Polly Lou is laid to rest. We've landed back home in California and Desert Memorial Park in Cathedral City. Here lies one of the great talents from the sitcoms of yesteryear, Suzanne Somers. She began appearing on film and TV in the 60s with small roles in films like American Graffiti. Suzanne would rise to stardom when she was cast as Chrissy on Three's Company, perfectly playing the dizzy blonde alongside John Ritter and Joyce DeWitt on the classic comedy.
Janet! What? There was my mother on the phone. She'll be here in a few minutes. What's she doing in L.A.? Oh, she wanted to see her dentist. If she finds out, two girls living in an apartment with a man, you know what she'll think.
Oh, come on, Chrissy. People are doing it all over the place.
That's what she'll think.
The role would earn her a Golden Globe nomination. After leaving Three's Company over a contract dispute, she starred as Hildy on She's the Sheriff, and would also be a star performer in Las Vegas. You 90s kids also remember Suzanne as part of the TGIF lineup, playing Carol in some 160 episodes of the sitcom Step by Step. Later in her career, she made her mark as a spokesperson for health and fitness, particularly as the face and thighs of the Thigh Master. She also wrote several books on health and wellness. Suzanne died from cancer in 2023, one day before her 77th birthday. And that concludes our tour. What are some of your favorite memories of the stars we visited today? Share them in the comments below, and be sure to like, share, and subscribe for more famous grave tours. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next one.